So I want to start by welcoming you to today's webinar, Be More Zappos, with my good friend, Alex Genov, who is the Zappos extraordinaire and also the head of consumer research at Zappos. And before I introduce Alex, I'm just going to take you through a few housekeeping rules and also goals for this session. And so today's webinar, it will be Alex speaking for about 30 to 35 minutes. We're going to allow for 20 to 25 minutes Q&A. I know that from previous speeches that Alex has given, really enjoys the interaction, the Q&A. So please save your questions, use the Q&A as well. You can use the control panel to ask any questions, and you can also chat at any point. And we can see that people are actively using that. And yes, so yeah, Michael's point on saving the broadband is also reducing our servers and being good to the environment. And hi, Wanda from Atlanta. So a quick introduction to myself. So my name is Chris Johnson, and I'm the CEO of Fedora Board. And we quantify emotion to enable brands like Procter & Gamble to make better human experience decisions for better business outcomes. And Gartner recognizes the importance of this, and they have made us a Gartner Cool vendor. And given that we're all potentially zoomed out, all the various Zoom meetings, I thought I'd share a short video to allow you to sit back, relax, and enjoy. So there you have it. That's just the quick overview of who Fedora Board is. So hopefully you found that useful. I just want to very quickly take you through our goals, both Alex and myself's goals for you today. So first goal is, if you've started your journey in creating a more customer or employee-centric organization, this session will give you a kickstart. And if you have, it will give you a turbo boost. The key things that you hear from Alex will very much focus on empowering you to make a difference. He's going to give you things that allow you to make an immediate impact. And if you stay to the end, you're going to get a present. And I'm going to let you know what that is. So today you're going to receive the playbook for creating a Be More Zappos experience for both customer and employee organizations. Everyone who attends today will get an experience scorecard. So we're going to take your brand, analyze comments that exist for your employees or customers, and present back 3 decision-ready insights that allow you to take action to improve your experience today. And then finally, you're going to get a practical guide for making your insights more prescriptive, be it using your Net Promoter Score or employee engagement. And I thought no better way to introduce this idea of the experience scorecard is to focus on Zappos. So prior to today's webinar, what we did was we took a number of online comments for both customers and employees. And the next number of slides, I'm just going to give you an insight into the analysis to obviously get you to the scorecard. So the first thing that you will see here is obviously the key takeaway is that both Zappos customer and employee experience is really good. So you can see the automatic indicator of the comments that have been analyzed for their customer and employee experience. They're doing a fantastic job. And you can see that we're measuring across different emotional indexes. And you can see that a key element of what's driving joy is, whilst your website people really like the fact that they do an amazing job on the speed of delivery. And this really follows a similar pattern. Look at that emotional signature for both their customer and employee experience. Pretty much the same. Obviously, the customers delivering a higher level of emotional experience. I think that the key thing to call out here is that what's driving joy for employees is the awesome culture. And you can see the last comment here is a gentleman whose job it is to conduct safety audits to make sure the building is in perfect condition. His main job is to perform awesome customer service and have a positive attitude. And that is just a wonderful comment. So from that, what we're able to do is we're able to give you a scorecard. And this for your brand will tell you how well you're doing from very poor to very good. And you can see that Zappos employee experience is performing very well with the key emotion of joy. We then correlate that to your employee rating or NPS, and that will then give us 3 predictions. And you can see that both the community culture and the customer service is driving significant amounts of joy. 73% of all the comments relate to the fact that people are talking about the community culture. And by building on that, they could drive the experience even more by 7%. And you can see the final insight is around their training, driving 2% more joy compared to the overall data set. If they build on that, they will drive the employee engagement by 2%. But look at this, we're able to get the top themes, and you can see that it's not only the community culture, people love the free food, but look at this, customer service. Wouldn't it be great if all our employees said, like, while talking on the phone with customers, it's talking to an old friend. What a beautiful way to sum up how people feel about interacting with their customers. So really, that's just to show you what you'll get as part of the overall takeaways from today's webinar. So to our main event, what I'd like to do now is to introduce Alex, who heads up customer research at Zappos. And I had the privilege of meeting Alex 2 years ago. He was invited by the Chancellor of Queen's University in Belfast to open the Human Experience Academy, so focusing on improving both customer and employee experience. And he was inducted to the Hall of Fame at the university. And the one thing to note about Alex is that whilst Tony Shea wrote the book on customer happiness, I think Alex definitely has the t-shirt and the funky shirt as well when it comes to living out those values, having worked at Zappos for nearly 7 years. And I think that Alex is a truly outstanding individual. And there are 3 things that stand out for me. I think that you'll hear from Alex that he's really passionate about people. He really cares about helping people. And in his professional work, his key goal is to help teams create remarkable products and services that make people's lives easier and more enjoyable. The second thing is he's an expert in the area of psychology, and by training, he's received his doctorate from Clark University, focusing on the unique area of experimental social psychology. And that really gives you an idea of his passion for research, design, and innovation, really to solve important customer and business problems. And his area of research covers measuring emotions right through to customer segmentation. And then finally, I think that we can all agree that Alex is a leader in human experience. He's got 15 years relevant experience, 5 years in academic research, and 10 years in customer research, having worked for other well-known brands like State Farm Insurance and TurboTax. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my share, and I would like you to give a warm welcome to Alex. So Alex, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you so much. So let me start my share here, and
Yes, that's perfect.
let me know if you guys can see my screen.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Well, thank you so much for the glowing introduction, for the kind words. I think you built me up so much that now the pressure on me is tremendous. But I'm really happy to be here talking to you guys. Again, thank you, Chris, and to the whole Adoreboard team, which is very aptly named because they're all really adorable. I really one of the most enjoyable times I had when I went to Ireland and spoke at Queen's University. Really outstanding team, and it's a privilege for me to talk to you today. And what I'll talk to you about is customer centricity and customer loyalty, and about the idea that we cannot hope to win customers' trust and loyalty if we do not understand them as human beings instead of just numbers. And loyalty matters because it leads to business results. In our world, in the Zappos world, customer loyalty is really nirvana. Now imagine the possibilities if early on, when you started a company and you were one of the first to, let's say, sell shoes online, you received an email with the subject matter wow. And mind you, that is year 2000. And the context of this email was that soon after Zappos started selling shoes online, there was a mishap with one order, and this woman was expecting her shoes to arrive for a special event, and they did not arrive on time. She was very upset. She wrote Zappos, and at that point, the Zappos team realized that they could have just, it's one customer, they could have blown her off and just decided to focus on selling more shoes. But instead, they said, okay, we're going to go out of our way to first apologize and then to make it right. And they did that. And they received this email back with the subject matter, wow. And this was January 26th of year 2000. And that is pretty remarkable. This is 21 years ago. And then imagine also the possibilities if you analyze thousands and thousands, even hundreds of thousands of customer comments, and you did a very simple word cloud out of them. And what popped were things like great and fast and service and selection and best. And that's what really a brand is. It's not what you're telling the world about you, it's what others are saying about you when you're not in the room. So look at some of the numbers that indicate how focusing on customer service and focusing on customer centricity really leads to business results. Because Zappos has built a business that our customers really love. We've been in business now for 21 years compared to the average company of about 10 years. And we can talk about a compound average growth rate of 54% compared to online retail of 10 and global e-commerce of 19. Now, mind you, the caveat here is that these numbers are before the pandemic. The pandemic changed a lot of things, and Zappos is adapting along with that. But I just wanted to give you a sense of during times that are not so abnormal, what business results you can achieve with the mindset of focusing on your customers. So from those numbers, you can see that unlocking customer centricity has enabled really enviable loyalty, sustainable business growth, and also a remarkable culture. And here's a couple of numbers to show that. And this is the acceptance rate at Zappos is actually more stringent or more competitive than the acceptance rate at Harvard. And this is a remarkable number. Mind you, this is mostly driven by the number of people who apply for our customer service jobs. And again, goes to show that when you believe in the power of service, then you're going to invest there, and what happens is then your brand is recognized for that, and then a lot of people will apply and want to be part of this organization, and then you can select the best of the best. The good news is that you don't have to be Zappos to be customer centric. Now, unfortunately, the one thing that stands in the way of most companies getting there is that they don't understand their customers as people. And when you don't meaningfully understand your customers, it is easy to treat them like numbers. I don't know if you guys have heard of the story of the statistician who had his head in a hot oven and feet in a block of ice, but on the average, they just felt fine. And usually when I deliver that in person, there's a lot of giggling and laughter in the audience. And what I say at that point is that this is really a very serious matter, because on the one hand, we're all enamored with this idea of big data and numbers and averages, and companies invest in that a lot. On the other hand, companies believe and talk about creating remarkable emotional experiences that create loyalty. But these ideas are inherently really incompatible, because you cannot average human experience. So to see the effect of an approach where you treat people like numbers, I'll give you an example of this of a really great customer service company, United Airlines. It's the largest service business in the world if you think about it. And again, this is pre-COVID. Now this business has suffered a lot, but let's go back in time a little bit and talk about that. On a single day, they would fly hundreds of thousands of passengers on 4,600 flights between over 300 destinations in almost 50 countries. And when you fly nearly 150 million passengers each year, it's easy to forget that passengers aren't just numbers. The moment that happened, and they put their own regulations ahead of passenger needs, this happened. I don't know how many of you are aware or remember this incident, the involuntary deboarding, quote unquote, incident of 2017, when the flights were really full and they overbooked, and they asked one passenger to give up their seat, and they refused, and they literally dragged them out. And it turned out that this was a doctor that was going to see a patient, and the whole situation became really a media sensation and got out there. And what happened was, in the matter of 24 hours, the stock of United Airlines dropped significantly. So you can see the effect of the business of this decision on really business results. And now this to me is absolutely fascinating, and this was provided by my friends at Adoreboard. They did this analysis of at the same time frame, analysis of the stock price relative to one of their emotional indices. In this case, they call it disgust. Think of it as just negative emotions out there in the media, in social media. And you can see the really clear correlation of the drop in stock price, and at the same time, the rise in these negative sentiments. Creating loyalty and driving business results is a lot easier when you remember the key insight of customer centricity. Customers are people, not statistics. Let's take customer centricity a step further. Let's talk about human centricity. Now, that insight is at the heart of everything we do at Zappos. It really pushes us to create a certain culture, company culture. It drives the way we understand our customers, how we do our research, also how we structure the way we work, and also how we apply our insights to the business strategies that we adopt. So the first step towards customer centricity is creating a culture that makes customers the heroes. That also goes along with the idea of creating a culture where employees really are valued. Recently, I read this really fascinating book. It's called "Setting the Table" by Danny Meyer, a really famous New York restaurateur, and there's very interesting parallels between how he writes about hospitality and the Zappos culture, and both in his view of real hospitality and also in Zappos culture, really employees, if you think about it, come first. Then happy employees are going to guarantee happy customers, and that's at the core of the Zappos culture. So here you can see the 10 core values of Zappos, and it starts with deliver wow through service. This is really number one. And then we have embrace and drive change. That's something that really is, we live in these really amazing times of change and uncertainty. Then create fun and a little weirdness. That's one of my favorites. And it's not about being weird. It's really what that says is everybody should be allowed to be themselves. So bring your whole self to work. Be adventurous, creative, and open-minded, and so on. The last one is by far not the least, is being humble. And that's another one of these signature Zappos culture traits, where humility is really valued, and it's really manifested in different ways. So for example, we don't have titles at Zappos and nobody has an office. When we were in the office, now we work from home mostly, but everybody had a desk and everybody was, it was not hierarchical, and the power was not manifested through dress or through these power rituals, but it was more about caring for customers and doing the right things by the customers. So here I will show you a brief video, again, pre-pandemic, kind of throwback to a time when we're all in the office.
I think it's really important for Zappos to hire people who align with our culture, that our culture fits, because every single hire has the ability to change the culture for the positive or the negative. And if you make too many compromises in your hiring decisions and you end up with an imbalance in your culture, then the negative can kind of outweigh the good.
The people that you work with are actually the most important resources in the entire company. It's not the product, it's not technology. So getting to know your people both personally and professionally will lead to not only a better environment, but to better results for Zappos.
People often say, like, do you pay people to be like smiley all the time? Like, no, but we're hopefully creating an environment where employees are helpful and happy, and I think that's just a side effect of our culture.
When people say, well, the core values, as an example you have at Zappos, those could never work in our company. Well, they probably shouldn't work in your company. You need to come up with your own identity. Tony will often get the question at Q&As about work-life balance, and I think he has a really great answer talking about work-life integration. So the idea that if you love what you do and you love who you work with, there's kind of a blurring of the lines of when you're working and when you're not.
We really appreciate and love what is unique about our coworkers. So we all come from different backgrounds and different experiences, and at Zappos they don't want you to turn anything off. Like, you should just be who you are all the time. So I think the future of Zappos will continue to be rooted in this foundation of these 10 core values, that we will continue to be fiercely passionate about customer service.
Most people want to be communicated to in different ways. People have different strengths and weaknesses. So knowing that you are open and available to them, I think, is really key. I guess my hope is that we maintain the current culture that we have and that we can enhance that culture. So we need to find the right mix of folks, basically get the right people on the bus, and hopefully the bus will go the right way.
Great. And maybe you guys have heard in the news, quite recently and very tragically, Tony passed away. But I wanted to basically show this video as a tribute to him, and just in the spirit of keeping his ideas alive. So here's some steps you can do to you can take to really go down this path of customer centricity. And again, you don't have to have the Zappos culture, but you can really focus on making your customers and your employees the heroes. It doesn't have to be complicated. So you first have to identify and articulate your core values. And the way Zappos did it back in the day was they started with ideas from leadership, and then they got the input from everybody in the company. Everybody submitted ideas and comments, and then they worked with those comments, and they distilled those to the 10 core values that you saw earlier. Again, very important to involve the whole company in the process. This is known as facilitative leadership. It's really important. It's you can have your vision, but also need to bring everybody along. It's not just the leadership team going off to a nice offsite, and then a week later they come with a PowerPoint and with some posters that go up on the walls, and then everybody's expected to just memorize those. That's not what the culture is. It's really having everybody buy into those ideas. And then most importantly, it's putting those values into practice. It's literally how you spend your money. If you believe in those things, you're going to invest in those areas. So for example, Zappos believes in customer service, and the main investment is in customer service. And also, again, back when everybody was on this amazing campus, the investments were all about how everybody's life can be, work life can be made better, instead of necessarily distributing expected and predictable yearly bonuses or raises, right? So that's another example of how you invest in order to show what you really care about. The next step towards human centricity is curiosity. It's really how you understand your customers. And at Zappos, we seek complete understanding of our customers as people. And we realize that everybody is different. One of my, as Chris introduced me, one of my areas of research during graduate school was individual differences. And that's a very applicable approach to a lot of businesses, understanding that especially if you serve a lot of customers, that not all customers are the same, and that really you can group customers in different meaningful subgroups that make sense for your business. So the way we do this at Zappos is we apply what's known as customer mindset segmentation. We did a couple of those through the years that I've been at Zappos. Then we overlay that, or we make that complementary to the transactional or the data segmentation or understanding. We have a very big and capable data science team, and there's really a lot of good use and application for big data and for analytics. Again, my point here is that you don't do one or the other, but you combine those two to really get the best results. We've done a lot of customer surveys to get a deeper understanding into our customers. Surveys are not a perfect tool. There's a lot of criticism. They can be done the right way or the wrong way. But as things stand now, surveys are the only tool we have to, at scale, understand our customers' mindsets and what's in their heads. We've also done deeper dives with phone interviews to really understand customers. And we've also done home visits, which is kind of the deepest dive you can get. And in there you understand not only the person, but you understand the context of their life, and you get the full picture. So here, as an example, I want to tell you the story of the crocheted shorts and the running shoes. And this was a home visit we did a few years ago in our research, again, to understand our customers. And we had asked them before the visit to think about an item they had bought recently. And they had agreed to welcome us in their homes and to show us around and so on. So the wife, the whole family was there. The wife greeted us. She was wearing these crochet shorts, and then dad was there and two teenage daughters. And we started first talking to the wife, and she said, well, these crochet shorts, the way she bought them originated from her daughter asking mom to buy the shorts because a friend of hers wore them. So mommy starts researching that item online. And as she's researching that, a thought occurs to her, which is, can I pull this off? Can me, mom, pull off and wear those crochet shorts that my teenage daughter wants me to buy for her? And she did, and she was very proud of herself. And she talked about styling them in different way for more formal or less formal wear and so on. And then we turned to the husband, and he was kind of quiet. And we asked him, so what about you, sir? What about shoes and clothes for you? He goes, well, I usually go for the basics, good quality, but basic stuff. I usually wear a uniform. And it turns out he was a policeman. And we could have stopped there and kind of could have done the stereotypical conclusion that, you know, the woman is interested in clothes and shoes, and the guy isn't. And but we didn't, and we went one step further, and we asked him about his hobbies, and it turns out he was an avid runner. And when he started talking about running shoes, he lit up, and he starts talking about, yeah, I go to these specialty running stores, and they check my pronation and this and that and the other thing. And that's a good example of just going a little bit below the surface, and then you find out a whole other world and mindset. Right? And now you can see how you can apply those mindsets when you communicate with your customers, right? So we can motivate certain people by giving them a challenge, like, can you pull off wearing this, or you understand what's important for them when they look for running shoes and so on. But that's an example of understanding the whole family in the context of their lives. So here are some practical takeaways. For understanding customers, it's starting with the business objectives or key questions. Don't start with saying we're going to do a survey or we're going to do a focus group. That's the how, that's the solution. But start with what questions or objectives you have. Then translate them into research questions. Then you can match, only at step 3, match the questions to both qualitative or quantitative research methods. Then you identify the key customer-facing stakeholders, and then you can also form a cross-functional customer council to say, okay, how can we as a whole organization structure this research so that all of us can benefit from it. Then let me skip through. So we have a few more tips here. You meet as a group to define the customer segments that you're interested in, and then you share your business objectives across the organization. You also, it's very important to share the existing insights with the whole group, and to identify the information gaps, come up with the research questions and methods as a group. And then very importantly, also share the budget to maximize the research impact. You know, this, especially in big organizations, you have this danger of this siloed way of thinking, where you have your marketing group with the VP of marketing, their own research budget, and then you have another VP of product, and they have their own research budget. And then because they don't communicate, and maybe there's some kind of territoriality there, that hurts the holistic understanding of customers across the whole organization. And then, of course, you need to share insights widely across the organization. And the final thing I'll talk to you about is the strategy of applying those insights to your business objectives. And here, I'll give you just a sense of when we found different segments within Zappos. This is a very high level view. I'm not giving away any really secret sauce of how we got to that point. But we identified a couple of segments, and I'll give them code names here. Let's say the active family, that expand a lot. They are engaged online. They're quite loyal. They don't care that much about discounts, which is a good match for the Zappos strategy, because Zappos is not a discount retailer. They also care about emotional engagement with the brand or the retailer. They care about pragmatic things like shipping and so on. But the key difference here is this emotional engagement and loyalty and so on. Contrast that with another segment, which here we, let's say we call that segment the single guy, that they care more about discounts. They're not that loyal. They don't spend that much. And they're not engaged so much online. So when you create truly personalized experiences, and that's again, it's more theoretical. It's not necessarily happening right now on Zappos.com, but it's one idea to approach that is to when we understand that somebody from the active family segment is interacting with the website, is to show them things that they really care about, like back to school, because most of them have kids and so on. And then when somebody from the so-called single guy segment looks at the website, then they see something that speaks to them, that's more relevant to them. So how can you apply this in practice today? You can start just talk to your customers. You don't have to have really big research teams or big research budget. Everybody can start talking to their customers in one way or another, but that's really the first step. Then very importantly, consolidate all your data in one place, all your customer data. So if you have separate databases containing data for the same customer, that doesn't help really. Then you can have a holistic view of the same customer. So the goal is to really have one database where each customer, let's say, is a row, and all the columns are all the data that are connected to them. Their clicks on the website, their behavior with their interaction with the emails, their conversion rates, their purchases, all of that. And you don't have to do really complicated data analysis. You can start with simple data analysis, but again, understanding customers holistically, longitudinally, and bringing various data sources to understand them. And then communicate, very importantly, the insights across silos in the organization. So I want to conclude my talk here with one comment that I found 18 years after the first WOW email. And now we have a really robust Voice of the Customer program that we developed over the past 7 years. And as part of that, we review customer comments on a daily basis. And this is a comment I came across. This was a couple of years ago, but it's really telling. So this was from July 2018. Wanted to thank John in customer service for going the extra mile and making my day. I mentioned to him a few days ago that my mother had passed away. He and your company sent flowers and a very sweet note that arrived yesterday. I was so shocked and surprised to receive this thoughtful gift. It made me cry. Thank you, Zappos. I loved you all before because my entire family wears a shoe size not found in stores. And now this. Wow. Thank you for showing that a large company can be awesome and compassionate. So you can see the mention of WOW again, and this bookends a period of almost 20 years, right? Which is pretty remarkable. So in conclusion, my message to you is that if you're customer centric, if you're human centric, your net promoter scores would skyrocket, your profitability could soar, and your customers would be writing you love letters for years to come. Thank you.
Superb. Thank you so much, Alex, and really appreciate that. So we're now going to go into Q&A. Might be useful if you could come on screen if you're okay, Alex. Yeah, super. Yeah, and yeah, we'll get started. So I think there's a lot of questions, Alex, about the intersection between employee and customer experience. And some of the questions related to that are, so how do you keep the culture alive when people are all working remotely? And that's from Jennifer.
Sure, great question, Jennifer. I think first of all, I would answer that question by saying that because Zappos had this culture for 20 years, then there was a much higher chance that that the company would thrive and endure during unusual times like this one. Right, so it's not. I don't think these things, can happen overnight. In terms of building a resilient culture, and now it's very difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. But I think the having built these relationships throughout the years helps, and also we have a great communications team, and again, great teams that used to organize these awesome in-person parties before, epic parties. But now they organize things like they would send somebody a box in the mail, or send us all some really cool stuff that we can enjoy, and we try to communicate as much online as possible, but it is these habits and these culture muscles, if you will, that have been built through the years that help you endure these unusual times.
Superb, thank you. And Stephanie asks, the trade-off between keeping a customer-centric culture alive when there's high pressure on cost reduction.
On cost, yeah. I mean, it is, that's what I meant by saying what the culture is how you invest your money. So Zappos, for example, there was Zappos has gone through the years. There has been, in the past, people have left the company and so on. But usually, when there is some kind of refocusing or restructuring, that goes along with a really generous, severance package, so that people can, and a lot of people who have left are really somebody who wanted to try something different, right? And so it's not, firings in the traditional kind of brutal sense of just, cuts, and then you're surprised and you find some out the next day that you're out, and so on. So even in that respect, Zappos is really unique. But if a company is solely focused on profitability and cost at any time, that's the culture. It's not quite compatible with this more human-centric approach.
Thank you. And Michael asks, in terms of your 360 view of customer, do you integrate that with the 360 view of employees in any way, or maybe just talk to the whole view of how the employee experience aligns to the customer experience?
Yeah, the employee experience at Zappos is that's the foundation of our culture. So it starts with onboarding. It starts with selection, right? Selecting the right people, because the idea and the philosophy at Zappos is when you hire the right people, you don't have to manage them really. There's no need for this micromanagement and for really all these bureaucratic steps, right? So select the right people, and the onboarding experience is really awesome, unusual, and really cool. Then it's 4 weeks of customer service training when you're onboarded, and that makes you part of the culture, and you kind of adopt a lot of those mindsets. And also, that's a way to say if somebody is not okay with that, with being a servant leader, let's say, if it's beneath them to talk to customers on the phone and to take customer service phone calls, then Zappos probably is not the right place for you. And then once you're on board, as I mentioned, the campus was amazing. Again, now it's changed temporarily during this pandemic, but I hope it goes back to the way it was, which was really, it was like Disneyland for the employee in a way, right? I mean, it was, if you have had a chance to visit the Zappos campus, it was really remarkable. We had tours. I mean, hundreds of people a day toured Zappos, like almost like a museum or an attraction, right? That goes along with a whole group that measures employee experience and really tracks that, because we do believe that there is a correlation and a causal relationship between having happy employees and having happy customers.
Superb. There's a couple of related questions in terms of understanding the needs of the team members. If they're not being met, how do you get buy-in to changing the culture? And maybe that relates to a second question from Teresa, which is, what are the first things you look for in the new hire? So how do you ensure you get that from the start, but then how do you get buy-in to a changing culture?
Yeah, I think I'll take the question of first how you select the right people. And it's again based on the core values, right? I think the first round of selection is do you fit with that culture mindset, with those core values? And so, I mean, I have a personal example, right? When I went through the interview, I mean, first I spoke to the recruiter, and it was a great conversation. And one of the questions he asked me was, rate how weird you are from 1 to 7. And I was a bit taken aback a little bit, but then I went with like 5 because I didn't want to be too weird and not too boring, right? But I think the purpose of that question is, if somebody is so offended by that question, say what kind of BS question is that, right? If that offends their ego, then you're probably not a good fit, right? So that's one of these little hurdles. And then when I visited the campus for an interview, right as the plane landed, I got a text message from somebody who said, "I'm Jen from Zappos. I'm waiting for you in the parking lot to give you a lift to Zappos." So the Zappos shuttle picked me up, and I chatted with Jen on the way there. And towards the end, she's asking me, now, do you gamble? And mind you, this is Zappos is in Vegas. And I thought, well, that's got to be a test question, right? And I said, no, I mean, I play the slot sometimes, but it's not really. But actually, the actual test is how you treat people who are not your superiors, right? So, and that's also, there's ways to assess that. You go out for lunch with the applicant at some point to see how they treat the waiters and the waitresses. And again, the point is, are you a genuine person? Are you somebody who's very nice to their superiors, but then not a good person, not a nice person to those beneath them? So that's the question. How do you live those values? And then, I mean, it's an art and a science to do that. Hopefully that answered it.
Superb. I think maybe we've covered a lot on the employee experience. Maybe shift gear to customer experience around segmentation. I know you've got a great story about barbecues and personalization at scale. Maybe you talk to that.
Right. Yeah, great questions, Chris. So there are two questions there, right? One is about segmentation. The other one is about personalization, and they're different and they're complementary. And a lot of a lot of companies talk about personalization now, and especially in retail, and my world now is retail. So a lot, when you go to these trade shows, they talk about personalization. All the vendors are about personalization, but if you really think about it critically, it's not real personalization. It's just best guess recommendations, and what those are these machine algorithms, AI predicting what the average person would buy after they look at one item, right? So let's say you're renovating your yard, and you want to get a barbecue. And by the way, that example is borrowed from one of our guest speakers at Zappos, somebody who was leading the digital experience at Walmart for a long time. So he had this great example of, let's say you want to get a barbecue for your backyard, and you buy this barbecue, and let's say it's $300, $400, $500 barbecue, and then the program shows you 10 more barbecues, right? Why? You just bought one. Why don't you buy 10 more? Why not, right? Maybe you're a collector of barbecues. And that sounds ridiculous, right? But unless you're a barbecue collector. But if you really understand what's behind that purchase, maybe that person bought a new house, or they're renovating their backyard, and they like to entertain people. Maybe then you're gonna have more intelligent suggestions, like have you thought of like a nice table, or maybe where you live, it gets cold in the winter, and if you want to entertain people, maybe you get these heaters and blah blah blah. So, but that is the idea of, you understand the person, you understand their goals, and then you offer them intelligent recommendations that show that you care about them, right? And you understand them, versus the algorithm has shown that on the average, when people buy something, then they're gonna buy something similar to that other thing. So that and that understanding, that brings me to segmentation, is again, when you're serving a lot of customers, usually there's different subgroups within them that are defined along dimensions that you care for your business. So it depends, again, depends on your business. But for example, for Zappos, we have segments, of course, that are more obvious, like men versus women, and that matters in terms of shoes and clothes, of course. But also, more interestingly, there's different mindsets or attitudes that define whether you're gonna go only for the lowest price regardless, or you're willing to pay more money if you get some extra value, and how you define that. So you need to do that work to understand your customers before you can start recommending things to them.
Maybe just to follow on from that, there's a couple of questions around chatbots. So, does that take away from how you deliver a wow culture? Does that get in the way of interacting with customers?
I'd say it depends. So if the chatbot is based on these static, non-intelligent rules, right? Then the chatbot will sound non-intelligent. I personally believe that the next frontier in that technology is to take that technology, which is basically scaling. It's just a scaling technology, but also to power it with real insights based on understanding your customers. So if, for example, you're dealing with just visitors to the website and you don't know who they are, you may have a generic approach, right? But if you're dealing with your customers and you get their permission to access their data and to use it to modify the experience for them, then the so-called chatbot could be emulating what a good customer service person would do, right? And there's, of course, a limit to that. And I've seen good examples of these experiences where, if it's a very routine set of steps, let's say you need to restart your router, your internet route or whatever, and then a person will just walk you through, they're going to read off a set of like steps. Chatbot can do that. You don't need a person to do that. But then if you reach a point where you need somebody to help you, then they say, well, now I'm going to hand you off to a person, right? So there's this hybrid approach as well.
Superb. Just shifting gears again into the employee experience. So there's a theme around the idea of servant leadership. So, and with that, a lot of questions around how do you give employee kind of guide rails for delivering that experience, and then, you know, create the moments that matter for the team members. So how do you create more empathy towards their teams? Can that be taught, or is that principle of servant leadership one of the core principles?
So I think that's a key principle. That servant leadership is at the heart of, let's say, with Zappos culture, being humble. And so core value 1 is wow through service, and core value 10 is being humble. So essentially that encapsulates that servant leadership, right? And I talked about how you select the right people. I mentioned at the beginning or maybe I didn't, but I'm a big fan of thinking of hospitality as a metaphor of great customer experience beyond restaurants and hotels. And one of the best books I've ever read is by this famous New York restaurateur, Danny Meyer, who says that one of his sayings is hospitality is when something happens for you, not to you. And in his book, he describes how he selects people for, and of course, like restaurants is a much more immediate interpersonal kind of interaction than, let's say, online business. But I think it's applicable. And he's talking about selecting people who are have the right mindset, people who are emotionally intelligent, people who really are able to be empathetic to others. So as a psychologist, I do believe there's a place for personality plays a role, and also training and development plays a role. So you have those two. I think you need to both select the right people and then also have the right training. And I think one of the most important things is leadership to model that, right? Because because especially in hierarchical organizations, people who are, you know, the employees, they take cues from leaders, and if they see that behavior being modeled, then you're going to have positive change.
No, that's brilliant. And Alex, I think just at this point, really to thank you for the wonderful insights that you've given. Really grateful. And I know from the quality of the questions that have come through, people are really excited by your ideas and thoughts. And I think maybe to leave them with that idea that you can't create an experience, the experience happens, right? I think that's one of your key ideas. And also thinking about people not as numbers, or thinking about customers and employees not as numbers but as people. You know, two really simple but very impactful ideas if you get them right. Is there any concluding thoughts just before we do the final wrap?
No, you put it brilliantly, Chris. Thank you so much.
Superb. So again, just really to thank you. We're going to leave the webinar open just so, because there were so many questions came through. I'm going to make sure both myself and Alex answer you. So we'll send you detailed questions. Just to remind you, you will get the playbook. So Alex has drafted this amazing playbook. You know, it's quite an extensive PDF. That continues his thought process. So I think that's going to be an excellent piece for you. And I know that we've already spoken to quite a lot of you in terms of getting your experience scorecards. Please bear with us. There's quite a lot of people who have been asking for this. So I know we'll be speaking to you in the coming days to book that in. And then there was a couple of questions around how do you link business impact to your experience being an employee or customer. And I think the practical guide to then going beyond NPS or going beyond numbers will hopefully answer those. So all I have to do is to gratefully thank our speaker, Alex Genov. Please join me in thanking him, and we'll be speaking to you in the coming days and weeks. Thanks again. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey, Alex.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, thank you so much. I know that Cody had asked the question